United States of America has a complicated and checkered history with Russia. The pair were embroiled in a Cold War that lasted the best part of 45 years. Despite being great rivals, the USA Armed Forces and the Russian Red Army have met in battle just once. But what if all of that changed? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that likes to investigate all lines of inquiry. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today we're asking, what if America invaded Russia? Before we get into this video, why don't you guys let me know what your D-Day plan is? If this ever happens, then D-Day's probably coming. Also, while you're down there, why don't you like this video and share it with a friend? What if America invaded Russia? Well, I mean, it's a bit of a death wish, isn't it? Since the end of the Cold War, documents have been released that have outlined both countries' passion for mutually assured destruction should the other strike. So, what would this mean in an invasion? If the United States invaded Russia, it would be considered an act of hot war. The pair have not been involved in a country-to-country hot war ever. They fought on the same side in World War I and II. Things only got intense after the Second World War, and both countries were threatened by the other's opposing ideals on how to build a strong nation. That being said, Russia and America have engaged in combat once before in history, 100 years ago in 1918. The USA forces joined the Russian White Army to stop the Bolsheviks, which was more wading into a civil war, and their mission wasn't a resounding success by any means. If the USA was seriously going to invade Russia, they would have a serious plan of attack, but as we know, if the USA was seriously going to invade Russia, they would have a serious plan of attack, but as we know, the devil and maybe Russians fall with the best laid plans. Would the US ever manage to even make landfall? Russia is vast, like seriously vast. It basically spans the east to the west, and there is a point in the world, believe it or not, where Russians and Americans can practically look eye to eye. Let me draw your attention to the two islands between the far-flung East Russia and the very far west of Alaska. This is Big Diomede and Little Diomede. One is owned by Russia, the other by the USA, and they're separated by just 4 kilometers. The United States could invade this land with little more than a hop, skip and a jump, although there would be little point in securing this island, and fun fact, for fact geeks like me, if war did ever break out between the islands, the date the war started would be contested. The islands straddle the time and date line. Despite being 2.5 miles apart, they have a time difference of 21 hours. That little tidbit aside, invading Russia in this way is pretty futile in traditional war, which would see a country securing the capital for a victory. Moscow is better accessed from Europe. I guess, unless that wasn't the objective, maybe the United States wants to own or annex the land that borders China and North Korea in order to make an Eastern power play. Either way, let's be clear about this. There's absolutely almost no way in which the United States could launch a surprise invasion on Russians. In our modern age of surveillance, the Russians would see it coming. If they even got a whiff of a United States invasion, they would be ready to defend their land with full force. In some ways, a good old-fashioned land invasion would be better news for Russia and the United States and the world. Better so than a bomb anyway. Any drop of a nuke could have disastrous consequences and would be met with full retaliation. During the Cold War, it was made clear that when it comes to Russia and the United States, the only way they play war is by threatening nuclear action. It's never been carried out, but then neither country has ever really invaded the other. If the United States made the unprecedented move to invade, depending on the death toll of the Russians, Vladimir Putin may be in a slightly more reasonable mood to act like a statesman rather than a warlord. This would not be the case if a bomb was dropped. If the US did invade, Putin would hold a press conference calling for Americans to withdraw, else they feel the full force of Russian anger. NATO would likely be scrambled to hold a crisis meeting, and traditional US allies would be confused and under pressure to pick a side. Would the United Kingdom, for example, support the United States in an invasion if it were unprovoked? World leaders wouldn't want to side with an aggressor, especially not China, who have had stern words on the topic in the past. It will all boil down to circumstances. If the United States has what they see as fair reason, perhaps they will garner some more support. If they had support, we could have another world war on our hands. If the invasion was unprovoked, however, perhaps this would be enough to convince Putin to press his polished and preserved red button, which he has once boasted could lead to the total annihilation of the United States. Would Trump or whomever is in power have time to retaliate? Would both Russia and the USA be destroyed in the fray? If so, perhaps China will find the space to rise. With the US destroyed, the world power and ethos would shift. Perhaps this would be the rise of the first Eastern powerhouse, and these videos would be hosted in either Russian or, more likely, Mandarin. Definitely something for you guys to consider. Of course, who really knows what would happen if America invaded Russia, but I can't imagine it would be good. What do you think would happen? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, don't forget to let me know your D-Day plan. Also, while you're down there, why don't you like and share this video? For now, I'm gonna get out of here and continue to dream of world peace. I'll catch you guys in the next video, but until then, stay curious, stay alert, and never ever stop questioning.